My name is Isabel Lawson. I am 63 years old. I spent 40 years of my life taking care of a family that eventually decided I was disposable. I worked as a librarian. I believed in quiet things, books, warm lights, home. I never imagined the end of my story with my daughter would sound like a sentence. Today was supposed to be my birthday. I baked my own lemon cake. I set one plate, one fork, one candle. I placed a tiny silver bracelet beside the cake. It was the bracelet I gave my daughter when she turned 7. She used to lift her small wrist and say, "Mommy, fasten it, do not lose it." I kept that promise. For 28 years, when I opened the door, she did not hug me. She did not even step inside. She handed me papers instead. Power of attorney, admission form, a destination. Faceless shot, a glimpse of Vanessa's manicured hand pushing the papers into Isabel's chest. Then she said, with no hesitation, with no shame, with no love, "My daughter dumped me in a nursing home on my birthday." Pause. Cold silence. Her voice cut through me like metal. "Rot there, you wretch!" That is what my daughter said to me, wretch. The kind of word people say for strangers or criminals. Not a mother who sold her wedding ring to pay for her tuition. Not a mother who worked double shifts so she could have ballet lessons while her own feet swelled in cheap shoes. I felt everything inside me collapse. But on the outside, I did something unexpected. I said nothing. Silence has a weight heavier than rage. Silence is the moment you finally understand that begging will not change anything. Off-screen, Vanessa talks with her husband Colin. Vanessa: "Once we sell her house, everything will be easier." Sell my house, the home I built, the place where I memorized every creak of the staircase and every crack in the kitchen tile. They put me in the back of the car. The lemon cake was still on the table. The candle was still unlit. Inside the car, I pressed the bracelet against my chest. My voice stayed inside me, like an animal curled up in a corner trying not to be seen. The window of the car reflected my own face back at me, a face that suddenly looked like someone who no longer belonged anywhere. Automatic doors open. Wind blows out the single candle on the cake. Faceless visual metaphor. And here is the part no one expected. Not my daughter, not the staff at the nursing home, not even me. Not at first. I knew I was getting $16 million in 3 days. $16 million. An inheritance from the only person who ever told me I mattered, my Aunt Maeve, the woman who once whispered to me, "Never apologize for being tender. Tenderness is courage." My daughter did not know. That is the unspoken truth. I walked into that facility in silence, but I walked in with a timeline. 72 hours, and when that money came, I blocked her cards. I sold the house she thought was hers. I took back my life. The man's teens. Moment everything changed forever was not when she abandoned me. It was when the consequences arrived at her doorstep. She called me, screaming, her voice cracked, panicked. "Mom, my cards do not work." That was the moment I stopped being powerless. That was the moment I became my own rescue. The back seat of the car felt too large for one person. I sat pressed against the left door, as if physical proximity to the cold window could keep me from disappearing into the space between leather and silence. My hands rested on my lap, holding the little silver bracelet, the one my daughter used to wear when her wrist was still small enough for me to close the clasp with one gentle pinch. I rubbed my thumb across the engraving, a tiny letter V, short for Vanessa. The surface had scratches now. Time leaves marks even on metal, even on people. I stared at the back of my daughter's head, her perfect hair, her posture that radiated annoyance, not affection. She sat in the front seat beside her husband, Colin, speaking in hushed tones while pretending I was not there. In that moment, I was not a mother. I was cargo, a responsibility they were tired of dragging behind them. The car smelled like the citrus cleaner Vanessa used obsessively. She hated any trace of real life, any evidence that humans leave fingerprints. The air conditioning blasted too cold for January, turning the inside of the car into a small square of winter. My birthday cake was still on the table at home, untouched. One candle, one plate, one wish I never got to make. The city blurred past the window, bare trees, gray sidewalks, people living their lives, unaware that mine was being quietly erased in the back seat of an SUV. Pain isn't loud. It settles in your bones like cold air. I felt it settle deeper with every passing streetlight. Vanessa didn't look back at me, not once. Instead, she scrolled through her phone. Colin drove without speaking, jaw clenched like he was doing something noble instead of cruel. The bracelet felt warm in my palm, even though my hands were freezing. I closed my fist around it. It was the only warmth I had. I thought of the years I spent holding Vanessa's hands while she learned to walk, while she crossed the street, during every nightmare. I thought of how quickly those hands let go. I thought I understood heartbreak. I had no idea it could take the shape of a back seat and a daughter who refused to turn around. My voice stayed inside my chest because I understood something new. Begging for someone to love you is another form of imprisonment. I had been trapped in that prison most of my life. Mothers are the quietest prisoners. We serve life sentences without knowing we ever pleaded guilty. Vanessa finally spoke. Colin, after we sign the papers, we can list the house immediately. My house. She said it as if I were already gone, as if I had evaporated. The market's strong, Colin answered. We could get top dollar, maybe rent it. Short term until we sell. They were planning their future with what used to be my past. My throat tightened. Not because of the house, because of the casualness of it. They were dismantling me like a task on a to-do list. I said nothing. Colin glanced at me in the rear-view mirror, not with empathy, with impatience, as if he was waiting for me to cause trouble so he could justify the cruelty. I kept staring at the window. The glass reflected a faint version of my face, washed out and ghost-like. I barely recognized the woman looking back. She's not saying anything, Colin muttered. At least she is cooperating. Cooperating, like I was resisting arrest. Vanessa sighed loudly. She does this. She acts like the victim, so we feel bad. I wanted to ask, when have you last felt anything for me? But the sentence stayed trapped behind my teeth. The bracelet pressed into my palm. My heartbeat echoed inside my fist. I finally understood something so sharp it made me dizzy. The pain was not being left. The pain was realizing I was never truly chosen. I whispered inside my mind, the deepest wounds are inflicted by the hands you trained to be gentle. The car hit a pothole. My shoulder knocked against the door, but nobody noticed. I looked at the bracelet again. It shimmered in a thin slice of sunlight, cutting across my lap. How many times had I fastened this around Vanessa's wrist? How many mornings did she show it proudly to her classmates? How many times had she said, "Mommy, look"? Once she cared about something I gave her. Now she discarded me like an item she no longer needed. The silence inside the car grew heavy. Vanessa tapped her nails against her phone screen. Colin cleared his throat. I felt something shift within me. Not anger, not rage. Something quieter. A decision forming without words. I would not plead. I would not justify my worth. I would not beg for space in a life where I had already been erased. The nursing home came into view. A sign with fading letters, too many windows, too many stories of abandonment hidden behind beige curtains. Colin parked. Vanessa grabbed her purse and stepped out before the engine even stopped. She didn't open the door for me. She walked ahead, fast, determined, like someone eager to finish a chore. Colin opened the back door and stood there, waiting for me to climb out on my own. No hand reached toward me, not one. I stepped out slowly. My knees are stiff from the cold. The bracelet stayed in my fist. Pain shot up my spine. I refused to wince. If suffering is the only power they left me, I would endure it with dignity. As we approached the entrance, a sharp wind cut across my face. My hair blew forward, covering my eyes. I brushed it back gently. Vanessa held the door open. For a stranger, walking out. Not for me. The stranger smiled politely at her. She smiled back. Then she let the door swing shut in my face. I stopped. Right there, I whispered to myself so quietly I almost did not hear. The words. The deepest cruelty is not being unloved. It is being unremembered. I opened the door myself. I walked inside. I said nothing. I was done performing worthiness. I was done pleading to be seen. Sometimes silence is not surrender. Sometimes silence is the first step toward freedom. The memory of that morning arrives with a scent: lemon zest, warm sugar, and something nostalgic I still cannot name. When I think about the day everything changed, I do not think of the nursing home first. I think of the kitchen. My small, yellow kitchen with chipped cabinets and a window that caught the soft winter sun. I woke up early, long before the light reached the curtains, because I wanted the lemon cake to cool in time for the afternoon. I wanted everything to be perfect. Even when no one else cared, I still cared. That is the exhausting part of motherhood. You keep caring long after everyone else has stopped. I set out the ingredients the way I always do: flour, butter, eggs, a single lemon from the basket. I washed it gently under warm water, then rolled it under my palm to release the oils. When I dragged the zester across the peel, the fragrance filled the room. It was the scent of summers at my mother's house, her lace curtains fluttering in the breeze, the radio playing soft classical music while she made pies. She always used the same white lace tablecloth for birthdays, the tablecloth that now lay folded in my hands. As I draped it across the table, I paused to smooth one fraying corner. My mother used to say, "Things do not lose their worth because they age. They gain a story." I whispered her sentence into the quiet kitchen as if it were a blessing. I never imagined how painfully that sentence would apply to people as well. I placed one plate, one fork, and one candle on the table. The setup looked lonely, a stage waiting for actors who would never arrive. I tried not to notice the emptiness on the other side of the table. I tried not to think about the years when birthdays meant balloons taped to the walls and Vanessa dancing around in socks, pretending the living room was a stage and I was the entire audience. Back then, I clapped loud enough for the world. Now the world was silent. I turned to the counter and reached for the last item to complete the table: the tiny silver bracelet. I kept it inside a velvet pouch in the drawer by the stove, where I could reach for it whenever I needed to remember that once, even for a brief time, Vanessa needed me. The bracelet was small, made for a child. The charm was delicate and engraved with the letter Vi. The clasp still had a faint scratch from the day Vanessa learned to tie shoes and declared that she was a big girl and could fasten the bracelet herself. She could not. She cried in frustration until I lifted her wrist and closed it gently. She looked up at me with tearful eyes and said, "Mommy, fasten it. Do not lose it." I remember the way her voice trembled, the way her trust rested in my hands. That moment became the anchor of my motherhood. A single sentence, a tiny wrist, a lifelong promise. That is the problem with promises. They do not break cleanly. They fray slowly until one day they snap. I placed the bracelet next to the plate. The candle flickered slightly as the heater kicked on. My house felt warm, but not enough to chase away the anxiety in my chest. I checked my phone again. No message, no missed call, no "on the way, Mom," not even an emoji. Vanessa had said, "I will come by sometime today. Colin might join if he is not too busy." Too busy to celebrate the woman who carried her. Too busy to slice a cake her mother made by hand. A faint knock at the door startled me. I wiped my hands on a towel, tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, and quickly checked the mirror. No lipstick. No need to look too eager. My heart beat faster because a part of me still hoped. I opened the door. It was Helen, my neighbor, 70 years old, white hair pulled tight into a bun. She always wore bright lipstick, as if daring time to dim her. She held a small bouquet of grocery store flowers, pink carnations, cheap, beautiful. "Happy birthday, Izzy," she said, with a tenderness that reminded me of sunlight. I felt my throat tighten. "You did not have to bring anything," she shrugged. "You deserve to be remembered." We sat at the table. She noticed the single place setting, the candle, the bracelet. Her eyes softened. "Con gai cobana?" she asked in Vietnamese accented English. She knew I understood enough from the summers I spent helping my mother in the immigrant community center. Helen had moved next door 20 years ago, and her presence always felt like a quilt on a cold day. I forced a smile. She said she would come. Helen's gaze drifted toward the window. Schedules tell the truth. Excuses do not. She stayed only a few minutes, long enough to give me company without making me feel pitied. Before leaving, she squeezed my hand. "You give too much, Izzy," she said. "Be careful not to disappear." Her words followed me back into the kitchen like a ghost. When the doorbell rang again, I felt a surge of relief. I straightened the lace tablecloth, smoothed my hair, lifted the cake knife slightly, preparing myself to greet my daughter. I opened the door with a hopeful smile. Vanessa and her husband, Colin, stood there. They did not smile. They did not hold a gift. They did not smell the lemon cake or notice the lace. They stood like people who had come to perform a task, not celebrate a life. Vanessa stepped forward just enough for the cold air to slide past her and into the hallway. Her eyes scanned me briefly, as though taking inventory. "Mom, pack your things," I blinked. "Pack for what?" She thrust a folder toward me, the same folder I would later hold in the back seat of the car. "You are moving into a care facility today." The floor beneath my feet did not move, yet everything inside me fell. The sound of my heartbeat drowned out every other noise. Vanessa glanced past me into the house but did not step inside. Colin checked his watch and said, "We need to leave in 10 minutes if we want to keep the appointment." Appointment, as if abandoning a mother could be penciled onto a calendar between coffee and errands. My voice cracked when I finally managed to speak. "You chose my birthday." Vanessa lifted one shoulder. "We needed a day you would remember." My eyes fell to the bracelet still resting on the lace. The memory of her 7-year-old voice crashed into me. "Mommy, fasten it, do not lose it." But the irony was cruel. I fastened the bracelet. I did not lose it. The one who let go was her. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to ask when love became an inconvenience. I wanted to plead for one more chance. But mothers are experts at swallowing their pain. So I picked up the bracelet, closed my fist around it, and stepped into the cold. Silent. Because sometimes silence is the only dignity we have left. Colin stepped aside so Vanessa could push the folder into my hands. The papers were thick, neatly clipped, and cold. The kind of cold that had nothing to do with temperature, but with intention. She stood tall, chin lifted. I could see she wanted control. Control of the narrative. Control of my reaction. Control of me. "These are the forms," she said, voice crisp. "Power of attorney, admission papers. The facility is expecting you." Facility. Not home. Not temporary care. A facility. I held the folder without opening it. My hands trembled only slightly, so I slid the silver bracelet into my pocket and wrapped my fingers around it to steady myself. The charm pressed into my palm like a pulse. It reminded me to breathe. My voice came out softer than I intended. "Vanessa, we were supposed to have cake." She didn't flinch. "Mom, stop. We've already talked about this." "We didn't talk. You told me." "That's the same thing," she snapped. "It wasn't. Talking is mutual. Telling is a verdict." Colin shifted nervously, avoiding my eyes. "We reserved the transport van. They charge if we make them wait." There it was. I wasn't a mother. I was in a time slot. "Did you even come inside to see the table?" I whispered. "No. Why would I?" Vanessa's voice was firm. "We are not celebrating anything. This is a transition." She opened the folder, pulled out the top sheet, and tapped the line where my name was printed. "You signed temporary medical authorization last year. I have the authority to place you where I think you'll be safe." Safe. A word so cruelly misused. I finally looked at the paperwork. Power of attorney. Signed by me after my heart scare last winter. I had given her access, not realizing I had also handed her power she wasn't emotionally mature enough to handle. In tiny italic print, authorized to make decisions regarding property, housing, and care. I swallowed. "Vanessa, I trusted you." She crossed her arms. "You're forgetting things. You left the oven on last week." "That never happened." "You fell in the shower." "No, I didn't." Colin rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Vanessa, maybe we should." She cut him off sharply. "No, She needs care. She can't live alone anymore. I felt something fracture inside me, not just pain, recognition. She wanted something, and this wasn't about my safety. "This house," I murmured, "is in my name." Her jaw tightened. A truth finally surfaced. "You're moving in," I said. Silence. Then Vanessa sighed like I was inconveniencing her. "Colin's business is struggling. The mortgage on our condo doubled. We need to sell this place and downsize. This is what makes sense financially." Financially? The betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was strategic. I stared at her as if she were suddenly a stranger. "So you're placing me in a nursing home? To free the house?" "To free resources," she corrected. The phrase hung in the air like a knife. I felt my chest tighten. Years of sacrifice flashed in rapid images. Overtime shifts, sleepless nights selling my wedding ring to pay her tuition, staying through every heartbreak. I gave her wings thinking someday she'd fly home. Instead, she burned the nest. Vanessa tapped the last page. "Sign here, Mom." A simple line, but if I signed, I would legally surrender my autonomy. "Vanessa," I said quietly, "I am still here. You don't act like it." Her dismissal landed like a slap. My instinct screamed to argue, to push back, to defend myself, to say I am not disposable. But a second voice, quieter and wiser, rose up in me. My mother's voice. Silence is not resignation. Silence is when you finally decide to see the truth. I closed the folder and held it against my chest. "I'm not signing anything." Vanessa's smile thinned. "It's already done. Power of attorney gives me the right." My pulse stuttered. She wasn't forcing me to sign. She didn't need me to. Colin cleared his throat. "Isabel, the van is waiting." I scanned Vanessa's face, searching for remorse. I found a calculation instead. "I didn't raise you to be this cold," I murmured. "You raised me to be efficient." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I raised you to be loved." She looked away. Colin stepped forward. "I'll help you to the car." His voice held something Vanessa's didn't. Hesitation, maybe guilt. I walked back to the dining table one last time. The cake cooled on the counter, smelling of lemon and memories. The lace tablecloth glowed under the soft light. I touched the silver bracelet, still hidden in my pocket, and inhaled deeply. Helen's earlier words echoed in my mind. "You give too much. Be careful not to disappear." I lifted the candle from the table. It was unlit, but I pressed it gently into my coat pocket like a keepsake. Then I turned around. Vanessa was standing by the door with her arms crossed. "Don't bring anything unnecessary." Unnecessary. My memories, my home, my existence. I walked past her without responding. She hated that. Vanessa fed on reactions, on emotional chaos. When she didn't get them, she panicked. At the threshold, she leaned into my ear and whispered, "Mom, just accept it. You're not useful anymore." Useful, not loved, not needed, just useful. I stepped outside into the cold air. Each breath turned into a small cloud in front of me. Vanessa walked behind me, phone in hand, giving instructions to Colin about storing furniture and listing items online. She had planned this. She had planned everything. A white transport van idled in the driveway. The side door slid open. The driver, a middle-aged man with soft eyes, helped me climb in. I sat on the bench seat, clutching the bracelet inside my pocket. Through the window, I watched Vanessa turn away from me without hesitation. No waves, no second glance, just dismissal. That was when the moral dilemma crashed into me like a wave. Should I fight for her? Should I swallow my pride and beg to stay? Should a mother ever walk away from her child? My heart whispered, but my soul whispered something else. Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing a mother can do. I turned my face toward the window. Vanessa stood in the driveway, scrolling her phone. Colin lingered on the porch, eyes cast down. His shoulders slumped, as if he knew this wasn't right. He looked at me through the van's glass and mouthed, "I'm sorry." The van began to move. As our house disappeared in the rearview mirror, something inside me shifted. A realization. Not loud, not violent, but grounded. Silence is not surrender. Silence is where I finally learned to see clearly. Vanessa had stripped me of my home, but she had no idea she had also freed me. Freed me from pleasing, from proving, from begging to matter. The bracelet warmed in my palm. I stared at it and felt a quiet strength fill me. I thought of the money coming in 3 days, the inheritance Vanessa knew nothing about. I imagined the moment she'd try to use my bank card and realize everything had changed. The thematic echo settled inside me like an anchor. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is clarity. As the van turned out of the neighborhood, I whispered into the empty space, "You will not break me." And for the first time in years, I meant it. The van stopped in front of the nursing home with a quiet sigh of brakes, that soft, exhausted exhale a machine makes when it knows it is delivering someone to a place they never asked to be. The sign out front read Willow Creek Senior Residence. Gentle fontal, painted flowers, a lie trying to disguise itself as comfort. The doors slid, open. Cold air rushed in first, the reality. The driver offered his hand to help me down. I thanked him with a nod because my voice no longer trusted me. He placed my single suitcase on the ground, and for the first time in my life, everything I owned fit inside something with wheels. A young woman at the reception desk stood up when she saw me enter. She wore navy scrubs, her hair tied in a neat bun. A name tag rested on her chest. It read, Mara, RN. She smiled, not the forced, polite type you give strangers, but the kind that has warmth behind the eyes. "You must be Isabel," she said gently. Her voice was soft with understanding, not pity. I nodded. "Yes, I suppose I am." She gestured me toward a clipboard. "Let's get you checked in." "Not welcome. We're here to support you. Just paperwork." Pages and pages of signatures someone else had already filled out on my behalf. Seeing my name printed without my consent felt like watching someone's stamp owned on my life. Mara watched me closely, as if she saw the invisible bruise forming under my ribs. "You're safe here," she said. Safe. The same word Vanessa used, except when Mara said it, I didn't feel erased. Behind me, the van pulled away. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. A cart rattled past us. A resident sat in a wheelchair, staring down the hall with an expression that looked like waiting, like expectation suspended halfway between hope and resignation. A cell phone lay on their lap, silent. In the lounge area, a man sat beside the window, phone pressed to his ear. "Hey, sweetheart, just checking in. Oh, voicemail again. Call when you can." He hung up, stared at the phone, held it like a lifeline that was slipping. Another woman paced near the wall phone, repeating, "They said they'd visit today. They said they'd visit today." A staff member took the phone gently from her hands, leading her to a chair. And it hit me. This place wasn't a home. It was a waiting room for forgotten love. Mara touched my arm lightly. "Let's get you settled. Your room is ready." As we walked, the hallway lights buzzed faintly overhead, the smell of disinfectant mixed with air freshener, like someone tried to disguise the scent of loneliness. Room 212. A door. A number. A new identity. Mara opened it, and I faced the space that was supposed to replace 50 years of my life. One bed, one dresser, one window. White walls that looked like they swallowed memories instead of reflecting them. "This will be yours," she said. Yours. A word that usually signified belonging. Here it meant confinement. She helped me place my suitcase on the bed. I unzipped it slowly, almost ceremoniously, revealing the items I had chosen when forced to pack in 10 minutes. 2 sweaters, a journal, a framed photo of Vanessa at age 8, and the silver bracelet. Mara noticed the bracelet immediately. "That's beautiful. Family heirloom?" I closed, my hand over it. "Yes, something like that." She didn't push further. Instead, she sat on the edge of the chair, arms relaxed, grounding the moment with presence rather than pressure. "If you need anything, even just someone to talk to, I'm here," she said. I studied her face. There was something familiar in the kindness there, something I had not felt in a long time. Being seen. "Thank you," I said, the words barely audible. Once she left, I stood in the middle of the room, no movement, no noise, just the faint hum of the heating vent in the corner. I let my fingers trace the windowsill. Outside, I could see the parking lot, a tree, the road where the van had just disappeared. My body wanted to collapse, but I didn't sit. I didn't cry. I simply stood and let the silence settle around me like a cloak. After a few minutes, a knock sounded at the door. Mara poked her head back in. "I almost forgot," she said. "Dinner is at 5, but if you're not ready to come down, I can bring something to your room." I managed a small smile. "I'll go down. I'd like to see the place." She nodded and disappeared again. When the dinner hour came, I walked down to the dining hall, a long rectangular room with round tables, plastic flowers in the center, ceiling fans that rotated lazily. Residents sat clustered in small groups, but not really talking, just present. At one table, a man in a plaid cardigan stared at an untouched tray. At another, 2 women sat in silence, holding their utensils but not eating. The TV in the corner played a cooking show on mute. I sat alone. The meal, meatloaf, powdered mashed potatoes, peas, was placed in front of me. The food tasted like nothing, like cardboard dipped in salt. Across the room, the woman who had paced with the phone earlier kept glancing toward the entrance. "She's waiting for her daughter," Mara whispered as she passed by. "Every night she waits. Her daughter hasn't visited in 9 months." I stared at the woman. Her hands shook every time footsteps echoed. She wasn't waiting for dinner. She was waiting to matter. That is when I felt something shift deep inside my chest, an ache so sharp it felt almost physical. These people weren't abandoned because they did something wrong. They were abandoned because they became inconvenient, just like me. After dinner, I returned to my room. The hallway lights dimmed to a soft amber hue. A cleaning cart squeaked down the hall, the sound of a television game show muffled through thin walls. I shut the door and leaned my back against it. The room was dim, lit only by a small bedside lamp that cast a warm pool of light across the blanket. My suitcase lay open, clothes neatly folded inside. The framed photo of Vanessa stared up at me from the dresser, her gap-toothed smile frozen in a time when love wasn't conditional. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the bracelet from my pocket. My thumb brushed over the charm as if I could rub memory back into reality. It didn't work. I lifted it to my wrist. It no longer fit. "I kept you," I whispered, "even when you let go." Slowly I lay down, pulling the thin blanket over my body. The mattress was stiff, but exhaustion finally pressed down on me. My eyes burned, yet still no tears came. The silence in the room was deep, too deep. It reminded me of the moments right before a storm breaks. I held the bracelet to my chest, right where my heart used to feel full. In the darkness, on the birthday my daughter placed me in a nursing home, I whispered to myself, "Happy birthday, Izzy." It was not a celebration. It was a survival. The night nurse did her final rounds around 10. After she closed my door, silence settled like fresh snow. I lay awake, staring at the shadowed ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the vent and the distant sound of a resident coughing down the hall. I thought sleep would rescue me. It didn't. The more I tried to breathe normally, the more my chest tightened. Not from fear, from disbelief. A birthday should mark presence. Mine marked disappearance. Just when the numbness began sinking into my bones, my phone buzzed. A vibration so soft it felt like a secret. I sat up slowly. The screen glowed in the darkness with a number I didn't recognize. I considered letting it ring. Then, instinct told me to answer. "Hello, this is Isabel." A voice responded. Calm, professional, and warm. "Mrs. Isabel Wakefield? This is Andrew Mercer. I'm the attorney handling Maeve Callahan's estate." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "Maeve," I gripped the phone tighter. "Maeve passed only 3 weeks ago." "Yes," he said gently. "I'm very sorry for your loss. She spoke highly of you." My throat tightened. "Not many people speak of me anymore." He continued, I'm calling to confirm that the legal documents will be ready for signature within 72 hours. Once signed, the transfer will be initiated. You will have access to the full inheritance within 3 business days. I blinked hard, confused. Transfer? I think you have the wrong Isabel. Maeve was the one with the money, not me. Andrew paused, then spoke with clarity. No, ma'am. She left everything to you. Her investments, her savings accounts, and the commercial property portfolio she managed. The estimated value is just under $16 million. 16 million. Million. The number didn't feel real. It settled around me like a blanket too heavy to lift. Andrew's voice softened. This is not a mistake. Maeve made that very clear. My voice trembled. She could have left it to charities, to her business partners. Mrs. Wakefield, he said gently. Her exact words were, Isabel spent her life giving without expecting anything back. It's her time to receive without being asked to prove her worth. My chest cracked. Open. Worth. A word I had not associated with myself in a long time. When can we meet? I whispered. I will send a car to pick you up for the signing. Thursday at 10 in the morning. Thank you, I managed. Mrs. Wakefield? He added before hanging up. Your aunt trusted you. I hope someday you trust yourself just as much. The call ended. The room went silent again, but everything inside me shifted. $16 million. No longer powerless, no longer trapped. I stared at the bracelet in my hand, the thin silver band pressing into my skin. The charm's edge left a small indentation beneath my thumb. The money wasn't what made me tremble. It was the timing. 3 days later, my daughter locked me here. 3 days later, she declared me useless. 3 days later, she turned me into luggage she didn't want. In 3 days, everything would change. As I held the bracelet, memory tugged me backward, toward Maeve. Flashback. 12 years earlier, Maeve had invited me to lunch at her favorite seaside cafe. The air smelled of coffee and sea salt. She always dressed like the wind belonged to her. Linen pants, rolled sleeves, hair loose and wild. I had just finished listing all the reasons I couldn't leave my job. Couldn't travel, couldn't spend money on myself, couldn't say no to Vanessa. My daughter had just called to ask for a little loan to cover a vacation. I remember apologizing to Maeve for my own life, apologizing for taking up space. Apologizing seemed easier than existing. Maeve folded her menu and leaned across the table. Stop apologizing for breathing, she said. Her voice held no judgment, only truth. I don't know how, I whispered. She studied me, then reached across and placed her hand over mine. You were not born to carry everyone else's weight. I stared at her. If I don't, who will need me? Her eyes softened with something like sadness. You confuse being needed with being valued. They are not the same. I shook my head. Vanessa needs me. No, Vanessa uses you. Her bluntness pierced me. I had no defense, just silence. She squeezed my fingers. Listen to me, Isabel. You are allowed to want something for yourself. I don't know what I want. That's because you never believed you were allowed to have desires. My eyes filled. I hadn't cried in front of anyone in years. She whispered, You have value. You just forgot that for too long. Her words entered me like medicine, slow, steady, healing something withered deep inside. That day she bought me a silver bracelet. Not to remind you of me, she said, fastening it around my wrist. To remind you of you. Back in my nursing home room, I pressed the bracelet to my lips. You have value. You just forgot. Vanessa's words earlier, the ones she hissed at the car, filtered back through my memory. You're not useful anymore. Useful? Maeve had offered a different script. Valuable. Not for what I did, for who I was. The contrast was so sharp it stole my breath. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Vanessa. Message preview. We're clearing out some furniture. Let me know if there's anything sentimental you want saved. Saved. As if my life could be sorted into boxes. As if I were a donor of objects, not a mother. I didn't answer. Instead, I whispered into the dark, "I am not disposable." I lay back against the pillow. My heart had stopped racing, my breathing slowed, the ache in my chest shifted, not gone, but finally making room for something besides pain. 3 days, 72 hours. A future was coming, quiet, steady, undeniable. I looked at the ceiling, at the faint glow of the hallway light seeping under the door. For the first time since arriving in this place of forgotten people, I felt something return. Myself. I closed my eyes and repeated Maeve's words like a vow. "You have value. You just forgot." And finally, I remembered. Thursday arrived with the kind of quiet that feels like held breath. A black sedan pulled up in front of the nursing home. Mara walked beside me to the doors. Her hand hovered near my elbow. Not touching, just offering presence. She understood the dignity of space. "You're coming back, right?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. "But when I return, everything will be different." She nodded, like she believed me without needing proof. Outside, cold air hit my face. The driver opened the car door and I slid into the back seat, smoothly, without hesitation. My suitcase was not with me. I didn't need it. I wasn't running. I was reclaiming. The car ride to the law office felt unreal. My fingers wrapped around the bracelet as if grounding myself to my own pulse. I whispered inside my chest, "You have value. You just forgot." When the car stopped, I stepped into a glass building with tall windows and walls lined with framed degrees. A receptionist guided me to a conference room where Andrew waited. He stood as I entered, a gesture so simple, yet more respect than I had received from my own daughter in years. "Mrs. Wakefield," he said, offering his hand. "I'm glad you're here." I sat down across from him. On the table lay documents arranged in neat stacks, thick papers, legal language, signatures half complete. A pen waited beside them like a starting gun. Andrew slid the final page toward me. "Once you sign, the transfer process begins immediately." The details blurred: commercial properties, stock portfolios, investment accounts across multiple banks, the number 16 million printed in bold. I read none of it twice. I signed. The pen felt heavier than it should, but when the last stroke of ink dried on the page, something inside me unlocked, something that had nothing to do with money. Control. Andrew gathered the pages, clipped them into a file, and closed it with finality. "It's done," he said. I exhaled, not with relief, with awakening. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out Vanessa's folder, the one she had thrust at me. The power of attorney she used to take my home, my autonomy, my voice. I placed it on the table. "I want to revoke this," I said. Andrew skimmed the pages. His expression shifted into understanding and concern. "Revoking power of attorney requires only your signature." He paused. "But removing her access to your accounts is a separate action." "I want that too." His eyebrows lifted. "All of it?" "All of it." He studied me, careful, searching. "Mrs. Wakefield, this will effectively cut your daughter off from anything tied to your finances." I swallowed. "I know." He sat back in his chair. "People sometimes make decisions like this in anger." I held his gaze. "Anger is loud. I am not loud. I am certain." He nodded slowly, still cautious. "Once we revoke this, she won't be able to use your accounts, make decisions, or access funds." "She already used my trust," I replied. "That is more valuable than any account." He hesitated before asking the hardest question. "Are you absolutely sure?" "She's your daughter." Something inside me cracked. Not a fracture, but a release. A truth rising to the surface. Being a mother doesn't require allowing someone to hurt you indefinitely. Andrew waited silently. I breathed in, steady. I raised her with love. But I refused to finance her cruelty. My voice didn't shake. Not once. Andrew took the revoked POA document, placed it in front of me, and slid over a pen. I signed with a firm, deliberate stroke. Next, he opened a digital banking portal on his laptop, rotating it toward me. "One more step," he said. "Your daughter is listed as an authorized user on multiple accounts. I need your verbal confirmation to remove her and freeze the cards. The screen showed Vanessa's name. Beneath it, authorized access, full. My stomach tightened, not from hesitation, but from realization. I used to be terrified of losing my daughter. Today, I was terrified of losing myself. You have my confirmation, I said. Andrew clicked a button. What about her credit cards? She has 3 secondary cards tied to your accounts. Yes, I said. Block them. He hovered over the option. When I do this, she will be locked out immediately. No access, no warning. I closed my eyes and saw the image of Vanessa standing in the driveway, arms crossed, telling me I was useless. I heard her voice again, sharp as broken glass. You're not useful anymore. Useful. That word had chained me for decades. Today, I broke it. Block them, I repeated. Andrew tapped the screen. Done. A final beep confirmed it. Vanessa was no longer legally attached to me, but I felt the invisible threads of motherhood. Tug. Painful. Conflicted. Andrew folded his hands. Is there anything you want me to tell her if she contacts the firm? I paused. What should a mother say in the moment she chooses herself? I could say she betrayed me. I could say she lied, manipulated, and used me. Instead, I spoke the truth that mattered. Tell her I wish her well, I said slowly, just not at the cost of myself. Andrew's expression softened. Most people never reach that clarity. A tightness I didn't even know I carried uncoiled inside me. My shoulders relaxed. My breath deepened. On the table, the revoked POA lay beside the inheritance documents like bookends of my past and future. You did something brave today, he said. No, I corrected softly. I did something overdue. He closed the folders and stood. I'll walk you out. When we reached the lobby, he stopped by the doors. The winter sunlight reflected in the glass, catching the silver bracelet on my wrist. Mrs. Wakefield, he said gently, you don't have to explain your decision to anyone. I smiled, small but real. I'm not explaining, I said. I'm finally choosing myself. Outside, the air smelled different, cleaner, sharper, like possibility. The car door opened. As I climbed in, Andrew leaned slightly toward me. If she calls in panic, he said, remember, this isn't punishment, it's protection. I held his gaze. For her or for me? For both, he said. On the ride back to Willow Creek, I pressed my palm over the bracelet. Thematic echo number 2 returned, not as a whisper, but as truth. You have value. You just forgot. And now, you remember. The following morning, I stood outside my old house with the winter wind sweeping across the porch. The familiar creak of the wooden steps greeted me as I climbed, the same creak I used to hear when Vanessa snuck out late as a teenager. But today, the sound didn't hurt. It simply acknowledged me. Beside me stood a mobile notary, her briefcase neat, her presence professional. Andrew had arranged everything. The locksmith waited nearby, tools ready. The notary handed me a pen. All we need is your signature to confirm the lock replacement and ownership affidavit. Ownership of my own home, something Vanessa assumed was hers. My hand hovered over the document, pen shaking slightly. The notary's voice stayed soft, patient. No rush, Mrs. Wakefield. This signature means the property title is officially removed from anyone else's access. From this point forward, nobody can take this home from you, not even Vanessa. I pressed the pen to paper. Ink flowed, a clean signature, a new line drawn. The locksmith nodded to me. You ready? I stepped aside. He drilled the old locks out. The sound wasn't loud, but it pierced through me. Each metallic grind sounded like breaking chains. 5 minutes later, he tested the new deadbolt and handed me the keys, 2 silver ones and a spare. Behind me, the notary flipped open her ledger. Take a photo of this key handoff for our documentation. She snapped the picture, a legal timestamp. Proof that this moment existed. Proof that I existed. We finished within 20 minutes. Everything done quietly, legally, efficiently. No emotions required, no permission needed. This was not revenge. This was a reclamation. When the professionals left, I stayed a moment longer. I walked into the living room. Even empty, the house breathed stories. The sunlight filtered through the curtains I had sewn years ago, creating thin golden stripes across the old hardwood floor. I moved slowly, tracing the grooves on the wall with my fingertips, where Vanessa's height had been marked in pencil every birthday until she decided she was too old for childish traditions. My hand stopped on the wall where our family picture used to hang. The nail still remained, bare, exposed, a stark silhouette of what once was. I laid my palm flat over the paint. "Goodbye," I whispered. "Please let me stay. Just goodbye." For the first time, the goodbye didn't break me. It freed me. I placed the new set of keys on the entryway table for a moment and breathed deeply. I expected to feel loss, but what filled me instead was clarity. This place held memories, yes, but not my future. My future had space. My future was mine. I locked the door behind me and started walking toward the driveway. Then I heard an engine. A silver SUV screeched to a stop. I recognized it instantly. Vanessa slammed her door and stormed toward the porch, Colin scrambling behind her. "What the hell? Why aren't the keys working?" She snapped at Colin, rattling the doorknob. "It's locked from the inside," he said. No, something's wrong. Try the other one. Try mine," she barked. Colin dug in his pocket, pulling out a spare key. He inserted it into the new lock. It didn't turn. He tried the second key. Nothing. Vanessa's voice cracked. "These keys worked yesterday." "They changed the locks," Colin muttered. Vanessa pounded on the door. "Mom, open the door. This isn't funny." I stepped toward the entryway, not close enough for her to see me yet, but close enough to hear my heartbeat slow and steady. I stood just beyond the frosted glass panel of the front door. My silhouette is visible, my face unseen. Colin knocked harder. "Isabel, please, we need to talk." Need. The same word she used every time she wanted access, money, support, never love. Vanessa's voice rose, desperate. "Mom, unlock the door." Her tone wasn't concerned. It was an entitlement. I stayed silent. Inside the glass, I watched them through the blurred outline. The daughter I raised, the man she chose, both banging on a door they assumed belonged to them. Colin turned to her. "Maybe she has a reason." "A reason?" Vanessa flared. "She belongs in that facility. It's better for her." The more she spoke, the more her voice cracked, fraying at the edges. Fear finally surfaced. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing control. Vanessa grabbed the doorknob again, shaking it violently. "Open the door." I placed my hand on the glass from the inside. Slow, steady, deliberate. She froze. Through the frosted pane, she could see only the outline of my hand. Calm, unmoving. "Mom?" Her voice broke. "What are you doing? Why are you being like this?" I didn't answer. Silence filled the space between us, not empty, but powerful. Colin rested a hand on her shoulder. "Vanessa, maybe we should go." "No," she snapped. "She owes me. She owes us." There it was. Truth, not love. Debt. I finally stepped closer to the door, letting her see my shape more clearly. I still didn't speak. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. Because explanations are a gift, and she had forfeited that privilege. "Mom," she whispered, pressing her forehead to the glass. "I need my cards. My accounts aren't working. I can't—" Her voice hitched. "You wouldn't do that to me." I could hear the panic rising. "Mom, we need that money. You know we do." I stayed silent, breathing slowly. Her words shifted, not softer, sharper. "Let me in. I deserve the house. You can't do this to your own daughter." I finally moved my hand away from the door. The absence of my hand was louder than any speech. My silence was a full sentence. Colin tugged Vanessa's arm. "Let's go." "No!" she screamed. She continued pounding on the door as if force could rewrite consequence, as if love could be demanded, as if motherhood erased boundaries. I turned and walked deeper into the house. I didn't rush. I didn't shake. I moved with the peace of someone who finally chose herself. Through the walls, I heard her voice crack. "Mom, please!" Not because she saw me, but because she finally saw the boundary. I walked down the hallway. When I reached the wall where the family portrait used to hang, I stopped. I pressed my palm flat against the cool paint one last time. Slow down moment. I inhaled. "This is goodbye," I whispered, voice steady. Not a plea to stay, not an apology, just goodbye. Outside, Vanessa kept yelling. Inside, I felt stillness. I picked up the silver bracelet, kissed it once, then slid it back onto my wrist. It no longer fit perfectly, but I fastened it anyway, because I did not need it to fit. I only needed to remember. I walked out the back door, locking it behind me. I didn't look back. When I reached the street, I turned one last time, not toward Vanessa, not toward the house, toward myself. The house wasn't mine anymore, not because I lost it, because I outgrew it. My phone rang just as I stepped back into my room at the nursing home. I hadn't even removed my coat. Yet. The sun outside was setting, casting long orange stripes across the floor. The bracelet on my wrist caught the light, a thin silver glimmer reminding me who I had chosen to become. The phone rang again. Vanessa. I let it ring twice more before answering. Not to be dramatic, just to choose the moment I picked up. I pressed the green button and held the phone to my ear. Her voice exploded through the speaker, so loud I pulled the phone away slightly. "Mom, my cards don't work!" No greeting, no breath. Just panic poured into a sentence. I didn't answer immediately. I sat down on the bed, crossing one leg over the other, calm and composed. I wanted to absorb every detail, the feel of the mattress beneath me, the softness of the blanket, the weight of the bracelet on my wrist. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is choosing. Vanessa screamed again, voice cracking with disbelief. "Mom, did you hear me? My credit cards aren't working. My debit card, too. I tried 3 stores. They're all declined." Her breathing was erratic. I could hear the tremble in it. Good. She finally felt what she had dismissed in me. Loss of control. I spoke slowly, evenly. "Yes, I heard you." There was a pause, just long enough for her to register that my tone was steady, unrushed, unbothered. Then she snapped. "What did you do? Did you mess something up when you moved? I can't pay for anything. I'm at the grocery store with a full cart and everyone is staring at me." The image of her standing there, angry, embarrassed, powerless, didn't give me satisfaction. It gave me perspective. I stood and walked toward the small window overlooking the nursing home courtyard. Outside, an elderly man fed breadcrumbs to birds. His face was relaxed, unburdened, invisible to everyone except the birds. Vanessa continued yelling, her voice spiraling. "Fix it! Fix it right now!" Fix it. That used to be the command she fired at me throughout her life. Fix my lunch. Fix my homework. Fix my mistakes. Fix my finances. Fix the fact that I couldn't handle adulthood. Fix me. I had lived as her emergency exit door. Not anymore. "You can stop yelling," I said. The calmness in my voice shocked her into silence. She was used to the mother who apologized before she breathed. "What did you do?" she demanded again, slower, more deliberate. "The bank said I'm removed from all accounts because you were." "I changed some things," I replied. "You changed everything," she shrieked. "Why would you do that?" I tightened the bracelet around my wrist. "Because I could." For the first time since she was a child, Vanessa didn't have a script. Her voice turned small. "We need that money, Mom. Colin's business is failing. We have bills. You were counting on me never waking up." Her inhale was sharp. "That's not... You're twisting this." "No," I said softly. "For the first time, I am untwisting the truth." I sat down in the chair by the window and leaned back. "You declared me useless, disposable. You moved me into a facility without my consent. It was for your own safety." I laughed once, short, humorless. "You were already measuring curtains for the living room before I was out of the driveway." Silence. The kind of silence that reveals the truth neither side wants to say. Then softly, Vanessa delivered the line that used to control me. "I'm your daughter. And I was your mother, past tense." She sucked in a breath as if I had struck her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend. I didn't justify. "When you left me here," I continued, "you told me to rot." Her voice broke. "I was upset. I didn't mean—" "Yes," I cut in. "You did." Another silence. Raw, unfiltered. Finally, her voice rose again. Not angry, but desperate. "You can't just cut me off." I stood and walked to the bedside table. The photo of Vanessa at age 8 smiled back at me, gap-toothed innocence radiating from the frame. I ran my finger across it. "You already cut yourself off," I said gently, "the day you stopped seeing me as a person." Vanessa's breathing grew frantic. "Mom, please, we need the money. You can't do this to us." The shift was subtle but unmistakable. "Now I need you." "No, I'm sorry, just we need the money." I closed my eyes and spoke the truth she had earned. "You said I was dead to you." Her breath caught. "So why?" I continued, voice quiet but razor sharp. "Are you trying to use the money of someone you declared dead?" Silence. Dead silence. The kind that slices through air like glass. Vanessa didn't speak. I felt her shock through the phone, a silence so dense I could almost see it. Then finally a whisper. Fragile. Fractured. "Mom, what are you saying?" I didn't soften. I didn't save her. I stood taller, bracelet catching the last light of day, and delivered the final blow. Not of cruelty, but of truth. "You treated me like I didn't exist," I said. "So I moved on as if I didn't." She made a sound, part gasp, part sob, part disbelief. This was not a moment of revenge. This was a moment of reclaiming. You don't get to benefit from the mother you buried. On the other end of the line, Vanessa broke. "You can't do this," she whispered. "You're my mom." "No," I said. "I was your mother until you told me I was dead." Silence again. But this time, the silence belonged to me. I ended the call, not abruptly, peacefully, with one sentence spoken into the quiet. "I choose myself now." I set the phone down and walked to the small dresser. My reflection in the mirror wasn't the woman who arrived here days ago. She wasn't broken. She was becoming. And finally, she remembered her worth. After I hung up on Vanessa, the silence in my room felt different. Not heavy, not suffocating, just a present, like a room that had finally emptied of ghosts. I stood there for a long time, fingers resting lightly on the bracelet, breathing slowly. My heartbeat no longer raced. It was steady, certain. But certainty doesn't erase memory. It just gives you the strength to look at it. I walked to the small dresser where the photo of young Vanessa sat. I lifted it, holding it close to the lamplight. Her smile in that picture was not entitled or sharp. It was pure, loud joy, gap-toothed, sun-warmed, and full of promise. She was only 8. People always assume mothers forget nothing. The truth is, mothers remember everything. I sat on the bed and placed the photo beside me. The silver bracelet rested against my wrist, just like it used to rest on hers. And then the memory came, slow at first, then flooding. Vanessa was 13. It was early morning before school, back when she still ate breakfast at the counter and told me about her day. She had just gotten permission to audition for band camp. It was a big deal. Only a few students made it in, and she had been practicing flute for months. But when she came home with the packet of forms, her excitement was replaced by fear. "Mom," she whispered, placing the paper on the table. "Band camp costs $1,200. I froze. $1,200 might as well have been $12 million. At that time, I worked the front desk at a community clinic, barely enough to cover bills, food, and her school supplies. I tried to keep my face neutral. We'll figure something out. But later that night, alone in my room, I sat with the bill in my hands and cried silently. I counted what little savings I had, $36 in a pink envelope behind the cereal box. $36. I didn't sleep. My brain worked through impossible math. One mother, one paycheck, one dream. The next morning, when Vanessa left for school, I walked to my jewelry box. It wasn't fancy. It was made of cardboard with faded roses on the lid. Inside lay my wedding ring. Platinum. A small diamond. Not big, not flashy, but real. My marriage had already fallen apart by then, but when I picked up that ring, I felt the weight of every moment I once believed in. The day he slipped it on my finger, the promises we made, the future we imagined. And I realized something. I couldn't save my marriage, but I could save her dream. I drove to a small pawn shop downtown. The bell above the door jingled when I walked in. The man behind the counter didn't look up at first. When he finally did, his eyes went straight to the ring in my hand. "I'd like to sell this," I said. He examined it carefully, weighing it between his fingers as if testing the worth of my past. "800, he said. "That's too low," I replied quietly. He shrugged. "Best I can do." He didn't know that a number wasn't what I was negotiating. I was bargaining with a memory. I was bargaining with sacrifice. I stood straighter. "I need 1,200. He looked at me then, really looked. Something softened in his expression. "Let me see what I can do." He disappeared into the back room. When he returned, he counted a stack of bills, 1,200 exactly. I exhaled, tears threatening. I left the store without the ring, but I left with something more important. I left with her dream. That afternoon, when Vanessa got home, she tossed her backpack onto the couch and sighed dramatically. "Never mind. I know we can't afford band camp." I placed the receipt on the table. "You're going." She gasped. Then she screamed. Then she threw her arms around me and cried. Real tears, not manipulative ones. She kept saying, "I can't believe it. I can't believe it." She promised she'd practice extra hard, that she'd make me proud, and she did. She earned top placement that year. She stood on stage in her crisp white shirt, flute shining in stage lights. I clapped louder than anyone. But the world didn't know what it cost. She never knew. I never told her. No one thanked me. No one remembered. When Vanessa turned 16, she stopped playing flute. By 18, she couldn't remember why band camp had mattered. But I remembered. I remember everything I gave up. Piece by piece. Dream by dream, dollar by dollar. I looked up now, sitting alone in a nursing home room, and felt the full weight of that memory. I whispered into the dim light, "I sold my wedding ring so you could feel chosen. Not useful, chosen." And now? She told me I was disposable. I picked up the photo frame and stared into young Vanessa's smiling face. "That was love," I whispered to her younger self. "Real love." My voice trembled but didn't break. "I gave you everything I had, everything I was, and somehow I never learned how to keep something for myself." I looked straight ahead, not at the wall, not at the floor, as if looking into a camera lens, into the eyes of every woman who had ever been told that being a mother meant erasing yourself. "I have given away too much," I said softly, "and I never kept anything for myself." The words settled in the room, heavy and honest. I rested the photo down gently and straightened the bracelet on my wrist. I wasn't going to apologize for loving my daughter. I wasn't going to regret giving her chances. But love should not require self-extinction. Not anymore. Some truths are not meant to change the past. Some truths are meant to free the future. I stood and walked toward the window. The courtyard lights had come on outside, small, warm orbs glowing in the dark. My reflection in the glass didn't look broken. She looked awake, and for the first time in my life, I felt the quiet power of choosing myself. The ocean air was the first thing that touched me. When I stepped onto the porch of my new home, salt, wind, freedom, it filled my lungs like something I had forgotten how to breathe. The cottage was small, painted pale sage with white trim. A single path of worn stones led from the front door to the dunes. The realtor had apologized for its size when I purchased it. I only smiled. "I don't need big," I told her. "I need mine." And this place, this quiet cottage beside the sea, felt like mine the moment I turned the key. Inside, the living room smelled faintly of cedar. The floors creaked comfortably, like an old friend stretching. The windows faced the horizon, wide and unashamed. No curtains yet. I wanted nothing between me and the water. The first thing I unpacked wasn't clothing or dishes. It was the silver bracelet. I hung it from a small hook beside the kitchen window. The morning sun filtered through it, creating a tiny spot of light that danced across the counter. It was as if the bracelet had finally become what it was always meant to be. Not a symbol of sacrifice, but of remembrance. "You carried me through," I whispered. "Now I carry myself." I made tea in silence that first morning. Earl Grey, a porcelain cup with lavender patterns. I let the tea steep slowly, breathing in its warmth. There was no rush. No one is waiting, no demands. My hands no longer shook when I poured water into the cup. I sat by the window, watching seagulls hover in the wind. The tide moved gently, brushing against the shore the way memories brush against your heart. Not gone, just softened. I took a sip of tea. It tasted like belonging. For weeks, my mornings fell into a rhythm. I woke when the sunlight touched the blanket. I brewed tea and let the warmth ease the stiffness in my bones. Then I sat at the small desk by the window and painted. Aquarelle. Watercolor. I hadn't painted in decades, but one afternoon while unpacking, I found an old sketchbook tucked between linens, hidden like a secret. Inside were drawings I had made as a teenager. Seashells, dunes, birds, dreams I forgot, dreams that waited. I bought brushes. Paints, heavy textured paper. At first my hands were clumsy. The lines are shaky. But the sea outside the window didn't care. It showed up every day without shame. So I did the same. I painted waves. I painted light. I painted myself back into existence. Some afternoons I walked the shore collecting smooth stones and driftwood. I planted succulents in clay pots along the porch and named each one after a woman I knew who survived something painful. Strength grows quietly. My phone stayed silent most days. Vanessa didn't call again. She didn't visit. Not to apologize, not to ask how I was. And I didn't chase her. You cannot force someone to value what they never learned to cherish. One evening, I sat at my desk with the window open. A light breeze carried the smell of sea salt into the room. I pulled a document toward me, paper, crisp, untouched. My attorney had emailed it earlier. Last will and testament. I took a deep breath and wrote, "I leave my estate to..." I paused, my hand hover. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindication. I felt peace. I did not write Vanessa's name. She had her chance. She chose absence. Instead, I wrote, "To the Willow Creek Resident Support Fund, dedicated to residents without family." Faces flashed in my mind. Elsie with her trembling hands waiting for a phone call that would never come. Mr. Randall dialed voicemail after voicemail hoping someone cared. They needed presence. They deserved dignity. I signed the document, date, and full signature. No hesitation, no second guessing. When I finished, I slid the will into a folder and tucked it into the desk drawer. That one quiet action, the stroke of a pen, closed one chapter and began another. I stood and opened the back door. The evening light cast everything in shades of gold. I walked down the path toward the sand. Each step felt like shedding. The cold sand hugged my feet. The tide greeted me with tiny foamy waves. I let the water wash over my ankles. It felt like renewal. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't disappearing. I was arriving. Later that night, I sat at the table with a journal in front of me. I began writing, not lists, not reminders, not chores, feelings, truths. What healed me wasn't the money. What healed me was the moment I chose myself. The waves crashed gently outside. I looked toward the bracelet, silver glimmer catching the lamplight. In this house, it was not a symbol of loss. It was a witness to love, to sacrifice, to rebirth. I whispered into the stillness, as if speaking to every woman who had ever erased herself to prove worthiness. You are allowed to keep something for yourself. The words lingered in the air, soft and steady. I stood and walked to the window. The moon reflected on the water like scattered silver, just like the bracelet. The night breeze touched my skin with tenderness. My life was no longer measured in usefulness. I was not a burden. I was not paid. It was not an obligation. I was a person. I turned off the lamp and let moonlight guide me back to bed. As I lay down, I felt a stillness I had never known. I no longer prayed to be chosen. I finally chose myself. It was late afternoon when I saw the silver SUV pull into the gravel driveway. The same car that once drove me away from my own house now sat in front of my new cottage by the sea. Sunlight reflected off the windshield, blinding me for a moment. I stood on the porch, watering a small pot of lavender. The ocean breeze lifted the hem of my linen shirt, and somewhere beyond the dunes a gull cried. Sharp, solitary, free. The car door slammed. Vanessa. She didn't look like Power now. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes swollen, her hair undone. She clutched her purse against her chest as if it were armor. She walked toward me, with hesitation as though crossing the porch required permission. "Mom," she said, breathless. I didn't move. I didn't rush toward her. I didn't rescue her from her discomfort. Silence did the talking. Her gaze searched my face, hunting for the version of me she used to control, the mother who apologized for existing. "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't respond. I placed the watering can down slowly, letting the last drop fall onto the soil. Then I leaned against the porch railing, waiting. Vanessa swallowed hard, her voice cracking with urgency. "We need the house back." There it was, not a question, a demand disguised as a plea. "We're being evicted," she continued. "Colin's business loan defaulted. They froze our accounts. Everything is falling apart." Everything that was built on my back. She stepped closer, tears welling. "Mom, please. We need the house. We need you." I let her words sit between us like a stone dropped into water, rippling, searching for impact. Need, not love. Need. I held my breath, then exhaled slowly. "You don't need me. You need the things that used to belong to me." Vanessa shook her head violently. No, that's not true. I'm here because you're my mother." "You came because the bank said no," I replied gently. She flinched. "That's not fair." "No," I said softly. "It's honest." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warm breeze. "I made a mistake." I nodded once, acknowledging her truth. "Yes, you did. But I'm here now," she insisted. "I'm trying. Trying to restore access to benefits, not to repair a relationship." "Why this house?" I asked. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Because it's ours." "No," I corrected. "It was mine. You assumed its future without asking its owner." She blinked, stunned by the clarity. A gull screeched overhead. Waves crashed against the shore. The world continued, indifferent to the drama unfolding on my front porch. Vanessa's voice trembled. "Can't we just start over?" Start over, a phrase people use when they don't want to face their consequences. "You never apologized," I said. "You never asked what you took from me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Just don't shut me out." I studied her, really studied her. The desperation wasn't about me. It was about resources, about rescue, about access. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the silver bracelet, the one I had carried through every heartbreak, the bracelet she once cherished, the only object she ever gave me from a pure place of childhood love. I held it gently between my fingers. Vanessa's eyes widened. She stepped toward me as if gravity pulled her forward. You still have it," I nodded. "I kept it because it represented a time when love between us wasn't transactional." She stared at it, breath catching. I extended my hand and placed the bracelet into her palm. Her fingers closed around it automatically, like muscle memory. "This," I said quietly, "is the only thing you ever gave me that I truly cherished." Her lips parted, confusion knotting her eyebrows. "You're giving it back?" "Yes." Why? Because love isn't meant to be proof of debt. She looked down at her palm, at the silver band shining under the afternoon sun, and she broke, shoulders trembling, tears falling onto the weathered wood of my porch. "I don't understand," she whispered. I spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "I am not punishing you. I am releasing you." She blinked rapidly. "Releasing me from what?" "From the version of me you expect to keep sacrificing." Her breath hitched. "But you're my mother." "I was," I corrected. "I mothered you. I raised you. I gave that part of myself fully." Vanessa reached out a shaking hand toward me. "We can fix this." I took one small step back. Distance. A boundary finally formed. "No, Vanessa," I said softly. "Some things break so we can stop pretending they were whole." She let out a sob, instinctively reaching for me again. "Mom, please." For a moment, her pain tugged at something deep in me, the ancient reflex to comfort her, to make her safe, to fix what she refused to face. But I didn't move. I didn't reach. I let the silence be my answer. She wiped her face, voice trembling. "So what do I do?" I met her eyes with calm clarity. "You learn to stand without leaning on the person you abandoned." The ocean wind swept between us, cool, steady, final. Then I spoke the last truth I owed her. I choose peace over proximity. Her hand faltered in the air, slowly falling back to her side. No yelling, no dramatic exit, no slamming doors, just reality. I turned toward the cottage door. My bare feet moved against the smooth wood of the porch. When I reached the threshold, I looked back once, not at her tears, not at the pain, but at the bracelet in her palm. "Goodbye, Vanessa." Not angrily, not bitterly, just truthfully. Then I stepped inside and closed the door. Not a slam, a soft click. Power through peace. Outside, the waves carried her sobs away. Inside, the house held my quiet rebirth. The ocean was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything. It simply exists. I stood barefoot on the damp sand, the hem of my linen pants brushing against my ankles. The tide had just pulled back, leaving behind smooth patches of untouched shoreline. The air tasted like salt and new beginnings. I wrapped my hands around a warm mug of tea. The steam curled upward, mixing with the mist that hovered over the water. In the distance, a few seagulls glided effortlessly, letting the wind carry them. I envied their trust. They never fear falling. They simply open their wings. Behind me, my little cottage waited with its open windows and sun-washed walls. The silver bracelet hung on its tiny hook near the kitchen window, catching morning light. It twinkled gently like a star that learned to rest on earth. No more pleading, no more explaining, no more shrinking myself to fit inside someone else's comfort. It felt strange at first, choosing myself. I had spent decades measuring my life by how useful I was to others. Mother, provider, helper, the one who stayed quiet so everyone else could be loud. But here, at the edge of the ocean, usefulness wasn't required. Presence was enough. I took a sip of tea and closed my eyes. The breeze brushed against my face like a blessing. For the first time in so many years, I did not brace myself for impact. I did not anticipate the next emotional blow. My body wasn't waiting for a hurt that never arrived. Peace is not loud. Peace is the absence of fear. The past few weeks replayed in moments, not as regrets, but as proof. The nursing home, the inheritance call, revoking power, changing the locks, the silent confrontation at the house, the bracelet. Goodbye. There was no scene where I won, because it wasn't a competition. It was a return to myself. I walked closer to the water. Small waves washed over my feet, cool and playful. I smiled at the sensation. I had forgotten what it was like to feel something simple and not attach meaning to it. Waves don't ask permission to exist. They come, they break, they retreat, without apology, just like healing, just like boundaries. I looked down at my hands. For years, these hands cooked, cleaned, paid bills, held tears, packed lunches, braided hair, and wrote checks for opportunities that weren't for me. They gave and gave until they shook from exhaustion. I used to hate the veins showing beneath my skin, seeing them as proof of age. Now I see them differently, proof of survival, proof that I remained, even when others walked away. I whispered into the wind, letting the words become part of the moving air. I didn't win anything. I simply stopped losing myself. The ocean answered with a steady wave. I sat on a small driftwood log positioned perfectly at the shoreline. The wood was weathered, softened by years of waves and storms. It reminded me of myself, changed, but not ruined. The horizon stretched endlessly, a reminder that life had more chapters than I once believed. Healing wasn't a destination, it was a practice, one gentle choice at a time. I glanced back at the cottage. Through the open window, I could see the delicate movement of a curtain. I could see the corner of my sketchbook open on the table. Watercolor brushes waited patiently for my return. Succulents lined the porch railing like silent cheerleaders. Every detail of my new life was small, simple, intentional. I didn't need luxury. I needed peace. The waves softened against the sand. I set my mug down and hugged my knees against my chest. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel everything: relief, sadness, release, pride. And then, unexpectedly, gratitude. Not for how things happened, but for how I survived them. A thought came to me, not loud, not dramatic, just true. I don't need Vanessa to choose me to know I have worth. The wind carried the words away, scattering them across the water. I imagined them pulled into the tide, carried beyond what I could see, released into the vastness of possibility. I stood again, brushing sand from my hands. The sun had risen fully now, casting a warm glow across the waves. The water sparkled, like tiny mirrors reminding me to notice the light. I walked back toward the cottage, each step grounding me in the earth beneath my feet. When I reached the porch, I paused. The bracelet glittered in the window, reflecting a beam of morning light onto the wooden floor. For years, that bracelet symbolized sacrifice. Now it symbolized permission. Permission to begin again. Permission to belong to myself. I touched it gently. "Thank you," I whispered. Not to Vanessa, but to the girl I used to be. The girl who loved without limits. The girl who believed love meant giving everything she had. And to the woman I became. The one who finally learned that love can include yourself. I sat at my small writing desk. A fresh sheet of paper lay waiting. A pen rested across it, uncapped. I wrote a single line at the top, speaking the words aloud as I wrote them. I didn't win against anyone. I just chose myself. The sentence flowed from my pen like truth that had waited too long. Outside, the ocean roared gently, not as noise, but as applause. I placed the pen down and looked straight ahead, imagining a faceless audience. Women like me. Women who gave too much. Women who believed love required shrinking. Women who were told that boundaries were betrayal. I spoke softly, as if telling a secret we were not meant to hide anymore. If you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you love, do you think I did the right thing? I didn't ask for permission. I invited reflection. Because healing is not isolation. Healing is a connection. And somewhere, someone would hear this story and whisper, yes, choosing yourself is not selfish, it's sacred. I breathed in deeply and let the ocean carry the rest.